Commander Vextal stood before the massive display screen in his command chamber. The blue and green planet rotated slowly in front of him. Earth, Terra 3, according to hegemony records. A small world at the edge of a spiral arm that barely deserved attention. Show me their military capabilities again, he ordered his tactical. Officer Lieutenant Zorkan pressed several buttons on his console. Images filled the screen. Crude metal ships that burned chemical fuel to escape their planet's gravity. Weapons that fired metal projectiles using explosive powder. Ground vehicles that moved on wheels instead of proper hover technology. This is what concerns the High Command? Vextal asked with amusement in his voice. These primitives have barely discovered faster than light travel. Their most advanced warship carries weapons that could not pierce our scout ship's shields. Behind him, Admiral Corthan studied the intelligence reports. The old commander had fought in 17 successful campaigns across the galaxy. His gray skin showed the scars of countless battles. The humans reproduce quickly, he said. Current population estimates show nearly 8 billion individuals on their homeworld alone. Vextal waved a dismissive hand. Numbers mean nothing without proper weapons or tactics. Look at their recent conflicts. He pointed to footage of human wars. They fight each other with the same primitive weapons they would use against us. No unity. No coordination between their different nations. They cannot even agree on basic trade policies. The tactical display showed Earth's military installations, scattered bases on different continents. Each nation maintained separate armed forces with different equipment and training. Some regions had no military satellites at all. Others possessed nuclear weapons but kept them pointed at their own species instead of watching for external threats. Their response time to any unified threat would be measured in weeks. Not hours, Vextal continued. By the time their various governments decide to cooperate, our occupation forces will have secured all major population centers. Lieutenant Zorkan highlighted several human cities on the display. Intelligence reports show most humans live in these large settlements. Control the cities and we control the species. The rural areas contain mostly agricultural operations and resource extraction sites. Admiral Corthan studied the data more carefully. Something about the human military structure puzzled him. Their soldiers train constantly for warfare, yet they have been at relative peace for decades. Why maintain such large standing armies? Because they fear each other more than any external threat, Vextal replied. Perfect for our purposes. A species that wastes resources preparing to fight itself will not be ready to fight us. The briefing continued with more evidence of human weakness. Their space-based defenses consisted of a few monitoring stations and communication satellites. No orbital weapons platforms, no shields protecting their major cities. Their fastest ships required months to travel between planets in their own system. The conquest should take no more than 3 standard cycles, Vextal concluded. I recommend we assign only secondary fleet elements to this operation. Our primary battle groups are needed for the campaign against the Corvani Republic. Admiral Corthan nodded slowly. Very well. Take the 5th Expeditionary Fleet. 12 heavy cruisers and supporting vessels should be more than sufficient. On Earth, Captain Lee Hyunwoo sat in the communications center of the Seoul Defense Complex. The morning shift had just begun when every monitoring station started receiving the same transmission simultaneously. The signal came from beyond the orbit of Mars and repeated in dozens of Earth languages. People of Terra 3, the mechanical voice announced. You have been selected for integration into the galactic hegemony. Prepare your leaders for transition of authority. Resistance will result in the elimination of your species. Captain Lee stared at the communication display in disbelief. Similar messages were being received at military installations around the world. The translation was perfect, suggesting the senders had been studying human languages for some time. Within minutes, his secure communication system connected him to General Park So-young at the United Earth Defense Command. The general's face appeared on his screen, showing the strain of someone who had received very bad news. Captain Lee, what is your assessment of this transmission? She asked. Ma'am, the signal originated from deep space beyond our outer planets. The power requirements for broadcasting simultaneously to every military installation on Earth suggest technology far beyond our current capabilities. General Park nodded grimly. Dr. Kim Tae-ho at the Research Division is analyzing the transmission patterns. His preliminary report indicates the signal passed through at least 6 relay points before reaching Earth. Someone has been watching us for a long time. Captain Lee pulled up the astronomical data on his secondary screen. General, our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual gravitic disturbances near Jupiter approximately 72 hours ago. If these aliens are using conventional faster-than-light travel, that timeline matches their transmission. 72 hours, General Park repeated. That gives us 3 days before they reach Earth orbit, assuming they maintain current velocity. The implications hit both officers simultaneously. 3 days to prepare Earth's defenses against an alien invasion force with technology centuries ahead of human capabilities. 3 days to unite a species that had never faced an external threat. Captain, initiate Emergency Protocol 7. Contact all defense installations worldwide. I want every available asset moved to defensive positions around major population centers. Captain Lee began typing commands into his console. Ma'am, should we attempt to establish communication with the approaching fleet? Perhaps we can negotiate. General Park's expression hardened. Their message was clear, Captain. Submit or die. These are not beings interested in negotiation. As Captain Lee worked to coordinate global defense preparations, he accessed intelligence reports about human military capabilities. The numbers were not encouraging. Earth possessed approximately 12,000 combat aircraft of various types, 300 naval vessels capable of orbital support missions, 240 active satellites, most designed for communication rather than warfare. Against unknown alien technology, these forces might prove entirely inadequate. But as Captain Lee watched defense installations around the world respond to the emergency alert, he noticed something interesting. Despite decades of political division, human military commanders were cooperating with remarkable speed. Language barriers disappeared as universal translation protocols activated. National boundaries became meaningless as commanders shared resources and intelligence. Dr. Kim Taeho's updated report arrived as Captain Lee finished coordinating orbital defense positions. The xenobiologist had discovered something troubling in the alien transmission patterns. The communication structure suggests a highly organized society with significant military experience, Dr. Kim reported. However, their assessment protocols appear designed for evaluating species similar to themselves. They may have severely underestimated human adaptability. Captain Lee forwarded the report to General Park with his own analysis attached. General, recommend we avoid conventional engagement tactics. Our weapons may be primitive, but we understand this planet and they do not. General Park reviewed the tactical assessments from defense installations around the world. Every commander had reached the same conclusion. In a direct military confrontation, humanity would lose quickly and decisively. But as Captain Lee prepared for the longest 72 hours in human history, he remembered something from his military academy training. The most dangerous opponent was not necessarily the strongest or best equipped. Sometimes it was the one with nothing left to lose. The alien fleet continued its approach toward Earth, confident in their superior technology and battle-tested tactics. They had conquered 17 species using the same basic strategy. There was no reason to expect Terra 3 would be any different. Neither side fully understood what was about to begin. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly 72 hours after their first transmission. Commander Vextal expected to find Earth's orbital space empty, except for fleeing civilian vessels and perhaps a few token defense platforms, making symbolic gestures of resistance. Instead, his sensors detected over 300 human vessels arranged in defensive formations around their planet. Most were converted cargo ships and mining vessels, but they had been fitted with weapons and positioned with tactical precision. Interesting, Vextal commented to Lieutenant Zorkan. The humans managed to organize faster than our intelligence predicted. No matter. Their improvised weapons cannot harm our ships. Lieutenant Commander Choi Minho sat in the command chair of the converted mining ship Soul Defender. Around him, his crew of former cargo pilots and mining engineers prepared weapons that had been installed just 2 days earlier. None of them had military training, but they understood their mission perfectly. All ships, this is Soul Defender, Choi broadcasted on the command frequency. Remember, we are not trying to win this battle. We are buying time for the surface defenses to prepare. Make every shot count. The human fleet began moving toward the alien ships. Their vessels were slow and clumsy compared to the sleek hegemony cruisers, but they advanced in perfect formation. Each ship had been loaded with everything the human military could provide in 3 days. Commander Vextal watched the approaching human vessels with amusement. Fire a warning shot across their formation. Perhaps they will see reason and retreat. A beam of energy lanced out from the Hegemony flagship, missing the lead human vessel by several kilometers. The energy was enough to vaporize a small moon, yet the human ships continued their advance without changing course. "Sir," Lieutenant Zorkan reported, "the humans are not responding to our warning. They appear to be targeting our forward shields with some kind of projectile weapons." Vextal studied his tactical display. The human weapons were indeed primitive, chemical rockets carrying conventional explosive warheads. Even their largest missiles could not penetrate Hegemony shield technology. "Let them waste their ammunition," he ordered. "When they realize their weapons are useless, they will surrender." The first wave of human missiles reached the Hegemony fleet. Most exploded harmlessly against energy shields that had been designed to withstand plasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes. The alien crews barely noticed the impacts. Then Lieutenant Commander Choi's special cargo reached the flagship. The Soul Defender had been loaded with an experimental weapon designed by Dr. Kim Taeho's research team. Instead of conventional explosives, the missile contained a crude but functional antimatter device built from parts salvaged from Earth's few research reactors. When the weapon detonated against the Hegemony flagship's shields, it created an explosion that registered on sensors throughout the solar system. The shields held for exactly 2.3 seconds before failing completely. The antimatter burst punched through 3 decks of the alien vessel before dissipating. Commander Vextal picked himself up from the deck of his bridge as emergency systems activated throughout his ship. Damage reports flooded in from all sections. 17 crew members were dead and his ship's main weapons were offline. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Their technology cannot produce antimatter weapons." Lieutenant Zorkan frantically checked his sensor readings. "Sir, the weapon appears to have been improvised from primitive reactor components. The humans converted their research equipment into weapons." On the surface of Earth, Colonel Yoon Jae-sung coordinated planetary defenses from a bunker beneath Seoul. The orbital battle was visible as bright flashes of light in the night sky. Each flash meant human lives lost, but also meant the aliens were not invincible. "All ground units prepare for enemy landing operations," he broadcast to defense installations worldwide. "The orbital fleet is buying us time, but enemy forces will reach the surface within hours." The Hegemony fleet regrouped after losing their flagship's shields. Commander Vextal transferred his command to a secondary vessel and ordered immediate bombardment of Earth's major cities. The humans had proven they could inflict damage, so it was time to end their resistance quickly. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, targeting military installations and population centers. But instead of mass surrender, the attack seemed to have the opposite effect. Human resistance became more organized, not less. Major Han Soo-jin led a squadron of atmospheric fighters against the alien landing craft. Her pilots flew obsolete aircraft armed with missiles designed for air-to-air combat decades earlier. Against advanced alien technology, they should have been helpless. Instead, Major Han discovered something that would define the rest of the war. When her missiles failed to penetrate alien armor, she ordered her pilots to ram their damaged aircraft into the enemy vessels. The humans did not retreat when their weapons failed. They became weapons themselves. The first alien landing craft crashed in the mountains outside Seoul after 3 human fighters struck it simultaneously. The pilots died in the collision, but they took 40 alien soldiers with them. More importantly, they provided the human military with its first intact alien technology to study. Colonel Yoon watched the crash site through surveillance drones. "All recovery teams moved to secure the landing site. We need that technology." Commander Vextal received reports of similar incidents around the planet. Human pilots were sacrificing themselves to bring down alien transports. Human soldiers were attacking landing zones with improvised explosives made from civilian materials. Instead of surrendering, the humans seemed to be fighting with increasing desperation. "Sir," Lieutenant Zorkan reported, "casualty reports from the surface indicate we have lost over 200 soldiers in the first 6 hours of landing operations. Our initial estimates projected minimal resistance." Vextal studied the tactical reports with growing confusion. According to Hegemony combat doctrine, a species should surrender once their orbital defenses were defeated and their major cities came under bombardment. Instead, human resistance was increasing. Dr. Kim Tae-ho worked frantically in his underground laboratory, studying fragments of alien technology recovered from crash sites. The materials were centuries ahead of human science, but the basic principles were understandable. More importantly, the aliens seemed to rely entirely on their technological advantage. Their weapons are designed to fight enemies with similar technology, he reported to General Park So-young. They have no defense against truly primitive tactics combined with improvised weapons. General Park coordinated the global defense effort from her bunker command center. Reports came in from every continent. Alien forces had landed, but they were meeting unexpected resistance. Human civilians were not fleeing to refugee centers as predicted. Instead, they were joining military units or forming their own resistance groups. The aliens expected us to fight like them, she told her staff. They prepared for orbital battles and conventional ground warfare. They did not prepare for a species that turns everything into a weapon. As the first day of invasion ended, Commander Vextal reviewed his situation. His fleet controlled Earth's orbital space, but at a higher cost than expected. His ground forces held several landing zones, but they were under constant attack by enemies who seemed to appear from nowhere. Most disturbing were the reports from his intelligence officers. Instead of breaking human morale, the bombardment and invasion had unified the species in ways their own governments had never achieved. Political divisions that had lasted for centuries were disappearing as humans focused on the common threat. Lieutenant Zorkan brought the daily casualty report to his commander. "Sir, we have lost more soldiers in one day fighting humans than we lost in the entire Corvani campaign." Vextal stared at the tactical display showing Earth's surface. Red markers indicated alien-controlled territory. They were surrounded by a sea of yellow markers representing active human resistance. The planet that should have surrendered in hours was preparing for a long war. "Send a message to Admiral Corthan," he ordered. "Request immediate reinforcement. These humans are not what our intelligence reports indicated." As night fell over the war-torn planet, both sides prepared for what would become the longest and bloodiest campaign in hegemony history. 3 months after the invasion began, Commander Vextal stood in what had once been the city center of New York. His forces controlled the major buildings and highways, but the humans had simply disappeared. 8 million people had lived here before the invasion. Now his sensors detected perhaps 50,000 in the occupied zones. The rest had vanished like smoke, taking with them every piece of useful equipment they could carry. Worse, they had destroyed what they could not take. Water treatment plants lay in ruins. Power grids had been systematically sabotaged. Even the sewage systems had been collapsed to deny his forces basic infrastructure. "Where did they go?" he asked his intelligence officer. Lieutenant Zorkan consulted his reports. "Thermal imaging suggests they moved into the surrounding forest and mountain regions. However, our aerial reconnaissance cannot locate their camps or supply bases." Captain Kim Do-hyun crouched in a tunnel that had once been part of the New York subway system. His resistance cell had been underground for 2 months, literally and figuratively. Above them, alien patrols moved through empty streets, while below, humans had created an entirely new city in the abandoned transit tunnels. "Show me what you learned from the captured equipment," he told his technical specialist. Private Lee, Sang-woo spread alien components across a makeshift table. "The good news is their technology follows logical principles. Energy flows through predictable pathways. The bad news is everything is about 200 years ahead of our current capabilities." Captain Kim studied the alien weapons. "Can we use them?" "Not exactly," Lee replied. "But we can turn them against their creators. Their energy cells can be overloaded to create powerful explosives. Their communication devices can be modified to intercept their tactical transmissions. More importantly, Private Lee had discovered something about alien psychology by studying their equipment design. Everything was built for efficiency and standardization. The aliens thought in patterns, followed procedures, and relied on their technology to solve problems. "They fight like machines," Captain Kim realized. "Perfect coordination, optimal tactics, maximum efficiency. But machines cannot adapt when the rules change." The first major shift in the war came when hegemony forces massacred a refugee camp outside Los Angeles. The attack was tactically sound. Eliminate civilian targets to break enemy morale. It had worked on 16 previous worlds. On Earth, it had the opposite effect. Sergeant Lim Yoon-ji had been escorting the refugees when the alien attack began. Energy weapons killed 300 civilians in the first 30 seconds. Military doctrine said she should retreat. call for backup, and wait for reinforcements. Instead, something changed inside her mind. Sergeant Lim spent the next 3 days hunting the alien patrol responsible for the massacre. She used improvised explosives made from civilian materials. She set traps using human psychology that the aliens could not understand. She moved through terrain that their sensors could not properly scan. When human forces finally tracked her down, they found her sitting calmly in a circle of 17 dead aliens, eating a military ration as if nothing unusual had happened. "Sergeant Lim, report your status," Captain Park Ji-min ordered when he reached her position. She looked up with eyes that seemed strangely calm. "Mission complete, sir. The patrol has been eliminated." Captain Park studied the scene around her. The aliens had been killed with incredible efficiency. Each one had died from wounds that suggested someone who understood their anatomy better than their own medical officers. "How did you know where to strike them?" Sergeant Lim paused as if the question confused her. "I watched them move. I learned how they think." It became obvious. Dr. Song Min-seo arrived at the scene 6 hours later to interview Sergeant Lim. As the military's chief psychologist, she had been documenting changes in human behavior since the invasion began. What she found in Sergeant Lim was beyond anything she had recorded before. "Describe your mental state during the engagement," Dr. Song requested. "Normal," Sergeant Lim replied. "I saw the problem. I developed a solution. I implemented the solution." Dr. Song studied her test results. Sergeant Lim's brain activity showed unusual patterns in regions associated with pattern recognition, spatial awareness, and threat assessment. More disturbing, her fear response had almost completely shut down. "Were you afraid during the engagement?" Sergeant Lim considered the question carefully. Fear is not useful when hunting. Similar reports began reaching Dr. Song from resistance cells around the world. Human soldiers who had been in continuous combat for months were developing abilities that seemed to exceed normal human limitations. Enhanced reflexes, improved night vision, almost supernatural awareness of their surroundings. Commander Vextal received his own disturbing reports from field commanders. Human attacks were becoming more sophisticated and more successful. Enemy forces seemed to anticipate hegemony tactics before they were implemented. "Sir," Lieutenant Zorkan reported, "the 3rd Assault Group lost contact with Patrol 7 near the Chicago ruins. When we found them, all 15 soldiers were dead. The humans responsible left no trace of their movements." Vextal studied the tactical display. Over the past month, his forces had lost more soldiers to human attacks than to equipment failures or accidents. The primitives were learning faster than his own troops could adapt. "What does intelligence say about human capabilities?" Lieutenant Zorkan consulted his files. Medical analysis of captured humans shows significant changes in brain chemistry and neural activity. Their reaction times have improved by an average of 40%. Stress hormone production has decreased despite constant combat exposure. The implications were troubling. The humans were not just learning to fight more effectively, they were physically adapting to warfare in real time. Captain Kim Do-hyun led his resistance cell through the ruins of Manhattan on a supply raid. His soldiers moved without speaking, communicating through gestures and expressions that had developed over months of underground warfare. They no longer needed radio communication to coordinate their actions. When they encountered an alien patrol, the engagement lasted less than 2 minutes. The humans struck from 6 directions simultaneously, used weapons improvised from alien technology, and disappeared back into the ruins before reinforcements could arrive. But Captain Kim noticed something that would have disturbed Dr. Song if she could have observed it. His soldiers were not celebrating their victory. They showed no emotion at all about killing the aliens. It had become as routine as eating or sleeping. "Next target," he ordered, and his team moved deeper into the city. Back in his command center, Commander Vextal reviewed casualty reports that made no sense according to standard military analysis. His forces were losing ground to an enemy that should have been defeated months ago. Worse, human attacks were becoming more frequent and more effective. "Sir," his communication officer announced, "Admiral Corthan is requesting a status report on the Terra 3 operation." Vextal looked at his tactical displays showing Earth's surface. Red zones marked areas under hegemony control. They were shrinking every day as his forces consolidated into more defensible positions. The yellow markers representing human resistance had grown to cover most of the planet. Tell the Admiral that the situation is under control, he ordered, but request additional reinforcements for the final phase of pacification. What he did not tell Admiral Corthon was that he no longer understood what his forces were fighting. The humans they faced now bore little resemblance to the species described in the original intelligence reports. They moved like predators, thought like tacticians, and fought like beings created specifically for warfare. In her underground laboratory, Dr. Song Min Seo completed her analysis of human psychological changes since the invasion began. Her conclusions would have terrified both sides if they had fully understood the implications. The human species was evolving in real time, triggered by extreme selective pressure. Those who could not adapt to constant warfare were dying or withdrawing from combat. Those who could adapt were developing enhanced abilities and passing those traits to new recruits through training and example. "We are becoming something new," she wrote in her classified report. "The question is whether we will still be human when this war ends." As the third month of the invasion concluded, both sides prepared for a conflict that neither had expected. The aliens faced an enemy that grew stronger with each passing day. The humans faced the challenge of remaining human while becoming the perfect weapon. Neither side yet understood that the war had already changed both species forever. Admiral Corthon arrived at Earth 6 months after the invasion began, expecting to find Commander Vextal's forces in control of a pacified planet. Instead, his flagship sensors detected active combat zones on every continent. The blue and green world that should have been another easy conquest had become a war zone where the hunters had become the hunted. "Status report," he demanded as soon as he reached Vextal's command center. "Commander." Vextal gestured to the tactical display. Red zones showing hegemony control had shrunk to small islands around major cities. Everything else glowed yellow, indicating active human resistance. "The initial assessment was incorrect," Vextal admitted. "These humans do not fight according to any known pattern. They have adapted their tactics faster than we can counter them." Admiral Corthon studied the casualty reports with growing disbelief. "You have lost over 3,000 soldiers to a primitive species armed with improvised weapons. How is this possible?" Captain Ryu Ji-hoon moved through the ruins of Seoul with his squad. Their movements so coordinated they seemed like parts of a single organism. 6 months of continuous combat had forged them into something that transcended normal military training. They no longer spoke during operations. Hand signals had evolved into a complex language of gestures and expressions. Each squad member could predict what the others would do in any tactical situation. When they encountered an alien patrol, the engagement unfolded like a deadly dance choreographed by months of experience. Private Hong Taiman flanked left while Corporal Yu Soo-hyun moved right. Sergeant Cho Kyung-ho provided covering fire while Captain Ryu struck from the center. The aliens died before they could call for reinforcement. It had become routine. "Next target," Captain Ryu signaled, and his squad melted back into the urban landscape. But something was different about this engagement. Captain Ryu had anticipated the alien patrol's movements before they made them. He had known exactly where each enemy soldier would take cover, which weapons they would use, how they would attempt to coordinate their response. It was as if he could read their thoughts. Dr. Song Min Seo documented the changes in her latest report from the underground medical facility in Busan. Human combatants were exhibiting abilities that exceeded anything in medical literature. Subject displays reaction times 60% faster than baseline human. Norms, she dictated to her recording device. Pupils show enhanced light sensitivity, allowing near-perfect night vision. Brain scans indicate increased activity in regions associated with spatial reasoning and threat assessment. The soldier she was examining was Corporal Kim Young-soo, who had been in combat for 5 months. His test results showed improvements in every measurable category of human performance. Strength, speed, reflexes, sensory perception, cognitive processing, all enhanced beyond normal human limits. "How do you feel?" she asked him. "Focused," he replied. "Everything is clearer now. The enemy's patterns, their weaknesses, the best ways to eliminate them." Dr. Song noted his emotional responses, or rather, the lack of them. Like other long-term combatants, Corporal Kim showed limited fear, reduced stress responses, and an almost mechanical approach to violence. "Do you miss your previous life?" "Your family?" Corporal Kim paused. "That person is gone. I am what the war made me." Commander Vextal walked through the streets of occupied Tokyo, surrounded by his personal guard. The city was under hegemony control, but it felt like walking through a tomb. Buildings stood empty, their windows dark. No human civilians were visible anywhere. "Where are they?" he asked his escort commander. "Underground, sir. They have extensive tunnel networks beneath every major city. Our forces control the surface, but the humans own everything below ground level." As if summoned by his words, the attack began. The first alien soldier died from a sniper shot fired from a building that sensors had confirmed was empty. The second fell to an improvised explosive device hidden in the rubble of a destroyed vehicle. By the time Vextal's guards realized they were under assault, half his escort was dead or wounded. The humans struck from sewers, abandoned buildings, and concealed positions that should have been impossible to reach undetected. They used weapons cobbled together from alien technology and human materials, creating combinations that hegemony tactical computers could not analyze or counter. Then they vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind only alien casualties and the growing certainty that nowhere was safe. Captain Ryu, Ji-hoon watched the alien patrols retreat through thermal imaging equipment, salvaged from a crashed hegemony transport. His enhanced vision could track the heat signatures of individual aliens through building walls. "They are learning fear," he observed to his squad. Sergeant Cho Kyung-ho nodded. "Good. Afraid enemies make mistakes." But Captain Ryu's comment revealed something more significant than tactical analysis. He was tracking individual aliens across multiple engagements, learning their personal behavior patterns, their individual weaknesses, and fears. The humans were no longer fighting an alien army. They were hunting specific alien soldiers. Admiral Corthan reviewed intelligence reports that defied everything he knew about warfare. "These casualty patterns make no sense. How can primitive humans eliminate trained soldiers without suffering comparable losses?" Lieutenant Zorkin consulted his analysis files. "Sir, the humans appear to have developed new forms of tactical coordination. They move in small groups that operate with perfect synchronization. Our soldiers report that human attacks seem to come from everywhere at once. Show me surveillance footage from recent engagements." The recordings were disturbing. Human soldiers moved through combat zones like predators stalking prey. They used terrain in ways that hegemony tactical doctrine did not account for. They turned debris and damaged equipment into weapons with deadly efficiency. Most disturbing, they showed no fear of death. When cornered, humans did not surrender or attempt to negotiate. They attacked with even greater ferocity, as if proximity to death made them more dangerous rather than less. "Sir," Lieutenant Zorkin continued, "medical analysis of human prisoners shows significant physiological changes. Their neural pathways have been altered by constant combat exposure. They process information faster, react more quickly, and show enhanced pattern recognition abilities." Admiral Corthan studied the medical data. "They are adapting to warfare at the cellular level?" "Yes, sir. More concerning, these adaptations appear to be spreading to new human combatants through training and social learning. The entire species is becoming more effective at killing us." In the underground command center beneath Seoul, General Park So-young coordinated global resistance efforts with her staff. Reports came in from every theater of operations. Human forces were gaining ground on all fronts. "The aliens are consolidating their positions," Colonel Yoon Jae-sung reported. "They no longer attempt to patrol rural areas or maintain extended supply lines. Because we taught them that leaving their fortified positions means death," General Park replied. "They are trapped in the cities they conquered." Captain Lee Hyun-woo entered the briefing room with the latest intelligence analysis. "Ma'am, our communications intercepts indicate the aliens are requesting reinforcements from their home fleet." General Park considered this information. "How long before additional enemy forces arrive?" "Unknown, ma'am. But our technical analysis suggests their faster-than-light communication has a significant delay. Any reinforcements would take months to reach Earth. Then we have time to complete the transformation," General Park said quietly. Her staff officers exchanged glances. They all understood what she meant. The human species was changing, evolving in response to existential threat. Those who could adapt to constant warfare survived and grew stronger. Those who could not adapt fell by the wayside. In a few more months, there might be no normal humans left on Earth. Only the new breed that had been forged by war against an alien invasion. Dr. Song Min Seo completed her final psychological evaluation of active combat personnel. Her conclusions would have shocked the human population that had existed before the invasion. Recommendation: all military personnel displaying enhanced combat adaptations should be kept in active service indefinitely. These individuals represent humanity's best hope for survival, but they may no longer be capable of integrating with civilian society. She paused her recording and looked at her own reflection in the laboratory's dark windows. After months of studying the psychological changes in others, she had failed to notice the changes in herself. Her own reactions had slowed. Her emotional responses had diminished. She approached the study of human transformation with the same clinical detachment that her subjects showed toward killing aliens. The war was changing everyone it touched, and no one would emerge from it unchanged. As Earth's first winter under alien occupation began, both sides prepared for a conflict that neither had anticipated. The aliens faced an enemy that grew stronger and more dangerous every day. The humans faced the question of whether victory would be worth what they were becoming. Evolution had accelerated beyond all natural limits, and there was no going back. 1 year after first contact, Admiral Corthan stared at tactical displays that told an impossible story. The hegemony fleet controlled less territory on Earth than when they had first arrived. Every month brought new reports of supply convoys destroyed, outposts overrun, and patrols that simply vanished without trace. "How many reinforcement requests have we sent to High Command?" he asked Commander Vextal. 17, sir. The most recent request was for a full battle fleet and orbital bombardment authorization. Admiral Corthan studied the casualty reports. "We have lost more soldiers on this single world than in our last 5 conquest campaigns combined. High Command is beginning to question whether Terra 3 is worth the resources we are spending." In the ruins beneath Seoul, Colonel Oh Tae-wook prepared his forces for what human intelligence called Operation Reclamation. After a year of guerrilla warfare, they had learned everything about alien tactics, technology, and psychology. Now they were ready to take back their cities. But the soldiers gathering in the underground assembly areas bore little resemblance to the humans who had first faced the invasion. They moved with predatory grace, communicated through subtle gestures, and showed reactions that seemed almost supernatural. "Primary target is the Alien Command Center in the Lotta Tower," Colonel O briefed his unit commanders. "Secondary objectives include communication arrays, weapons depots, and transport facilities." Captain Ryu Ji-hoon studied the tactical display with enhanced vision that could process information faster than military computers. His squad had survived 12 months of continuous combat by becoming something that transcended normal human limitations. "Infiltration routes?" he asked. 17 confirmed paths through the underground networks, Colonel O replied. "But we will not be sneaking into the building. We will be taking it by direct assault." The room fell silent. For months, human tactics had relied on stealth ambush and hit-and-run attacks. Direct assault against fortified alien positions had been considered suicide. "Sir," Sergeant Cho Kyung-ho spoke carefully, "our previous analysis indicated that frontal attacks would result in unacceptable casualties." Colonel O smiled, and his expression carried something that would have frightened normal humans. "That analysis was based on our capabilities 12 months ago. We are no longer the same species that began this war. The assault on alien-occupied Seoul began at dawn, but not in any way the hegemony forces expected. The humans did not attack the building. They infiltrated it like a living organism, appearing simultaneously throughout the structure. Security cameras recorded impossible images. Human soldiers emerged from ventilation shafts that were too small for normal people to navigate. They materialized from service tunnels that sensors had confirmed were empty moments before. They moved through the building's defensive systems as if those systems did not exist. Commander Vextal watched the security feeds from his command center with growing horror. His fortress was being invaded by enemies who seemed able to predict every defensive measure his forces deployed. "How are they moving through our sensor nets undetected?" he demanded. Lieutenant Zorkin frantically worked his control systems. "Sir, they appear to understand our technology better than we do. They are using our own systems against us on the security monitors. Human soldiers systematically disabled alien defenses using captured equipment, modified in ways that hegemony engineers had never considered. They turned communication devices into jamming systems, converted energy weapons into cutting tools. and transformed medical equipment into explosive devices. But most disturbing was how they moved through the building. The humans flowed around obstacles like water, coordinated their actions without apparent communication, and struck with precision that seemed to require them to know exactly where every alien soldier was located at all times. Captain Ryu Ji-hoon led his squad through the tower's middle floors, his enhanced senses tracking heat signatures and electrical activity through the building's structure. He could hear alien heartbeats through walls, smell their fear through ventilation systems, and predict their movements based on patterns learned from hundreds of previous encounters. When his squad encountered alien defenders, the engagement lasted seconds. The humans struck from multiple angles simultaneously, used weapons improvised from building materials, and eliminated targets with efficiency that bordered on mechanical precision. Floor 17 secured, he reported through communication equipment that had once belonged to the aliens they had just killed. Colonel O coordinated the assault from the building's lower levels, watching as his forces moved through the structure like an immune system attacking a virus. Every alien position was identified, isolated, and eliminated with minimal human casualties. All units, Phase 2, he broadcast. Capture alien command personnel alive. We need information. The final phase of the assault focused on the tower's upper floors, where Commander Vextal had established his command center. The aliens had prepared multiple defensive positions, automated weapon systems, and energy barriers designed to stop any possible human attack. None of it mattered. The humans bypassed the defenses by moving through spaces that had not been designed for combat. They used the building's own structure as a weapon, turning support beams into catapults, electrical systems into traps, and water pipes into projectile weapons. When Captain Ryu finally confronted Commander Vextal in his command center, the alien commander was alone, his guards dead or fled, his weapons useless against an enemy who seemed to anticipate his every move. You cannot win, Vextal said, trying to maintain some dignity in defeat. The hegemony will send more fleets, more soldiers. We will not stop until your species is extinct. Captain Ryu studied the alien with eyes that held no hatred, no anger, only the cold calculation of a predator evaluating prey. When he spoke, his voice carried the certainty of someone who had transcended normal human limitations. You created us, he said simply. We were farmers, teachers, engineers, artists. You made us into weapons. Now you fear what you created. But it is too late to stop the process. Commander Vextal looked into those enhanced human eyes and saw something that would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his life. The humans had not just adapted to war, they had become war itself. The capture of Seoul was completed in 18 hours. Similar assaults succeeded simultaneously in Tokyo, London, Berlin, and New York. Within 72 hours, human forces had recaptured every major city on Earth. Admiral Corthan received the final transmission from Earth's surface with the knowledge that his military career was over. General Park So-young's face appeared on his communication screen, and her words were delivered in perfect hegemony standard language. Admiral Corthan of the Galactic Hegemony, she began formally. Your invasion force has been defeated. Your ground installations have been captured. Your soldiers are dead or imprisoned. The Admiral studied her image, looking for some sign of the primitive species his intelligence reports had described. Instead, he saw something that made his species' greatest military commanders look like children playing at war. You have 48 hours to evacuate your remaining forces from Earth's orbital space, General Park continued. Any hegemony vessel remaining in our system after that deadline will be destroyed. With what weapons? Admiral Corthan challenged. You still possess no space-based military capability. General Park's expression showed something that might have been amusement in a normal human. We possess something far more dangerous than weapons, Admiral. We possess the knowledge of how to kill your people efficiently, and we are no longer confined to our planet's surface. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Corthan staring at a dark screen and contemplating the impossible. The humans had captured enough hegemony technology to understand faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and orbital mechanics. More frightening, they had proven they could adapt that technology to purposes its original creators had never imagined. Dr. Song Min-seo completed her final report on human psychological transformation from her laboratory in the recaptured Seoul Medical Center. Her conclusions would have been incomprehensible to the species that had existed before the invasion. The human population of Earth now consists primarily of individuals exhibiting enhanced combat capabilities, reduced emotional responses, and cognitive patterns optimized for warfare, she dictated. These individuals show no desire to return to pre-war social structures or occupations. She paused her recording to look out the window at her transformed city. Humans moved through the streets with the fluid coordination of pack hunters. They had rebuilt their civilization around the principles of constant readiness and maximum efficiency. Recommendation: Earth should be considered a military state under permanent martial law. The civilian population that existed before the invasion no longer exists in any meaningful sense. As the sun set over a planet that had been forever changed by 12 months of total war, both sides prepared for a future that neither had anticipated. The aliens faced the prospect of retreat from their first failed conquest in centuries. The humans faced the challenge of deciding what their species would become, now that they had evolved beyond the limitations of their original nature. In the darkness between stars, both species would carry the scars of a war that the hegemony fleet departed Earth's orbital space 36 hours before General Park's deadline expired. Admiral Corthon watched the blue and green planet shrink in his view screen, carrying with him the knowledge that everything his species understood about warfare had been proven wrong. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "Hi. Command is requesting your immediate report on the Terra 3 operation." Admiral Corthon stared at the tactical data files that would accompany his report. Casualty figures that defied military logic, combat recordings that showed impossible human capabilities, medical analyses that documented a species transforming itself in real time. "Prepare the following message for High Command," he dictated slowly. "The species designated as Terran humans represents an unprecedented threat to hegemony expansion. Recommend immediate classification as hostile and extreme caution in all future contact." He paused, knowing that his next words would end his military career. "Further recommend that Terra 3 be designated as a quarantine zone. The species there is no longer the primitive civilization described in our original intelligence reports." Commander Vextal stood in the detention area of the flagship, one of only 43 hegemony soldiers who had survived the final assault on Earth's cities. Around him, other survivors displayed symptoms that military medical officers had never encountered before. Combat veterans, who had fought across the galaxy, now woke screaming from nightmares about human faces emerging from shadows. Experienced soldiers refused to enter enclosed spaces without multiple guards. Officers who had led successful campaigns against dozens of species now requested transfers to any assignment that would take them far from Earth. "What did we fight down there?" asked Lieutenant Gorthel, a reconnaissance specialist who had served in 8 previous invasions. His hands shook as he spoke, and his eyes constantly scanned the detention area for threats that existed only in his memory. "I do not know," Vextal replied honestly. "They looked like the same species we invaded, but by the end, they had become something else entirely on Earth." Dr. Song Minseo conducted her final interviews with the enhanced humans who now represented the majority of the planet's surviving population. Her subjects displayed capabilities that redefined the limits of human potential, but at a cost that she was only beginning to understand. "Do you remember your life before the invasion?" she asked Captain Ryu Ji-hoon during his psychological evaluation. He considered the question carefully. "I remember a person who shared my genetics and some of my memories. But that individual was weak, inefficient, vulnerable. He could not have survived what we faced. Do you miss him? Do you want to return to that state?" Captain Ryu's enhanced eyes showed no emotion. "Would you ask a butterfly to return to being a caterpillar, Doctor?" Song documented his response and moved to her next question. "What are your plans now that the immediate threat has ended?" "The threat has not ended," Captain Ryu corrected. "The aliens will return with greater numbers and better preparation. We must be ready." Similar responses came from every enhanced human she interviewed. They showed no interest in rebuilding the civilization that had existed before the invasion. Instead, they focused entirely on preparing for the next war, convinced that the conflict with the hegemony was only beginning. General Park So-young stood in her rebuilt command center in Seoul, studying intelligence reports from the captured alien technology. Human scientists had learned to operate hegemony communication systems, navigation computers, and weapons platforms. More importantly, they had learned about the broader galaxy and humanity's place within it. How many member species does the hegemony control? She asked Dr. Kim Tae-ho, who had been leading the effort to understand alien technology. Current estimates suggest over 400 worlds under direct control, with thousands more paying tribute or serving as client states, he replied. Earth was intended to become number 401. General Park studied star charts that showed the vast scope of alien civilization. Hundreds of species had been conquered using the same methods that had failed so catastrophically on Earth. The galaxy was full of worlds that had surrendered rather than risk extinction. But none of them fought back the way we did, she observed. According to their historical records, no species has ever successfully resisted a hegemony invasion, Dr. Kim confirmed. We appear to be the first. Colonel Ote-wook entered the briefing room with reports from the global reconstruction effort. Cities were being rebuilt, but not according to their original designs. Every structure now incorporated defensive features, hidden weapons caches, and tunnel networks that would allow rapid military response to any future threat. The civilian population is requesting guidance on reconstruction priorities, he reported. General Park considered this request. The distinction between civilian and military populations had become meaningless during the invasion. Everyone who survived had become a combatant in some capacity. Tell them to build for war, she decided. Because war is what we do now. Captain Lee Hyun-woo monitored deep space sensors from the rebuilt Seoul Defense Complex. The enhanced human operators could process information at rates that exceeded the capacity of their original equipment, requiring constant upgrades to keep pace with their evolving capabilities. Any signs of alien activity? General Park asked during her daily briefing. Negative, ma'am, but our range is still limited to the outer planets. If they return with a larger fleet, we will have minimal advance warning, General Park nodded. Then we need to expand our detection capabilities beyond this system. The implications of her statement were clear to everyone in the room. Humanity could no longer remain confined to Earth, waiting for the next invasion. They needed to take the war to their enemies. Dr. Kim Tae-ho had reached the same conclusion through his analysis of captured alien technology. Ma'am, we now possess the technical knowledge to construct faster-than-light vessels using hybrid human-alien technology. The enhanced manufacturing capabilities of our transformed population could produce a small fleet within 2 years. A fleet for what purpose? She asked, though she already knew the answer. To ensure that the hegemony never again considers humanity an easy target. In the months that followed, Earth's transformation accelerated beyond all previous rates. The planet became a fortress world, its population unified around a single purpose, preparing for the war they knew was coming. Enhanced humans worked around the clock to master alien technology and improve upon it. They developed weapons that combined human ingenuity with hegemony engineering. They built ships designed for warfare against species that had never faced effective resistance. Most importantly, they prepared themselves psychologically for a conflict that would span the galaxy. Captain Ryu Ji-hoon stood watch over the rebuilt city of Seoul, his enhanced senses monitoring radio frequencies and thermal signatures across the metropolitan area. Around the world, thousands of others like him maintained constant vigilance against threats that might emerge from the darkness between stars. Status report. General Park requested during one of her routine inspections. All defensive systems operational, he replied. Population readiness at maximum efficiency. Morale indicators show complete unity of purpose. General Park studied the soldier who had once been a simple civilian, caught in an alien invasion. Like all the enhanced humans, he had become something that transcended the limitations of the original species. Do you ever wonder what we have become? She asked. Captain Ryu considered the question with the same analytical precision he applied to tactical problems. We have become what survival required, he replied. The species that existed before the invasion could not have defended Earth. We can defend the galaxy. His words carried the weight of absolute certainty, spoken by someone who had evolved beyond doubt or fear. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Corthan filed his final report with Hegemony High Command. His conclusions would reshape how the galaxy's greatest military power viewed the small blue world at the edge of a spiral. Terra 3 represents a fundamental threat to hegemony. Expansion doctrine, he wrote. The species there has demonstrated the ability to adapt to military pressure in ways that our strategic models cannot predict or counter. He attached combat recordings that showed human soldiers moving with inhuman coordination, using improvised weapons to devastating effect, and displaying tactical awareness that seemed to border on precognition. Recommendation: Terra 3 should be avoided until we develop new methods for dealing with adaptive species. The humans are no longer the primitives described in our original intelligence reports. They have become something that our forces are not equipped to fight. The report concluded with words that would echo through hegemony command centers for years to come. We did not lose a conquest campaign. We lost a war against evolution itself. As Earth's second year under permanent martial law began, the transformed human species looked to the stars with eyes that held no fear, only purpose. They had learned the most important lesson in the universe. When faced with extinction, adaptation was everything. The galaxy's greatest predators had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. Humanity had learned not just how to fight, but how to become the perfect weapon. The war was over, but the fear would never end. And in the darkness,